has the news about Ben Wallace, the British Defence Secretary, standing down, reached Ukraine?
It's a very sad news for Ukraine. I know Secretary Wallace personally. He is absolutely fantastic. I'm not coming absolutely into internal British politics. It's just up to British people to decide who will be their politicians, MPs, and ministers. But I should tell you that Ben Wallace is one of the most bright, straightforward, courageous people that I saw. And I can tell you that British people can be proud of such a defense secretary, and Tories can be proud of such member of the party and one of prominent members.
Well, that's very good to hear, Mr. Goncharenko. That's nice to hear. So I think Ben Wallace has given a pretty comprehensive interview to the Sunday Times, and he talks about the build-up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where he was texting with his counterpart, the defense minister of Ukraine, about getting weapons to Ukraine. And he used whiskey names, the names of different Scottish whiskies, to refer to the weapon system, because at that time they didn't have a secure line. Is that a well-known story in Ukraine?
No, me personally, I didn't know this. So I read this interview, and that was a funny story. And how then he presented this whiskey to Shoigu, Russian Minister of Defense. That was funny. That is absolutely in style of Ben Wallace, this kind of perfect British humor. And I mean, like, he is great. I saw him just several days ago in Vilnius and NATO summit. Now I'm in Odesa already, but that time I saw him there. And it's a very pity that he is leaving. And I want to tell you, he was one of those who made this, like a steady policy of the UK governments during this Russian invasion. Prime ministers changed. Boris Johnson made a great job. Then Truss made a great job. Now Rishi Sunak is doing great. But behind of this was Ben Wallace, who was not changing, and he was continually supporting Ukraine. He was leading in many things in support of our country. But not just because he understands that Ukraine people, they deserve the support, but he also clearly understands that Ukraine is fighting also for the UK today, as well as for the whole free world. And this clear understanding and being not a hesitant and reluctant, like many of his colleagues in the West, unfortunately, that was a very big part of British leadership and UK leadership, which UK showed during these 17 months. And I want to thank British people for this. And I can't, thank enough Ben Wallace for all job he's still doing. And again, it's a very pity that he's going to leave.
I don't want to make this too much about Ben Wallace and Britain, but obviously this is an opportunity to talk about Britain's role in supporting Ukraine. But there was a slight bit of controversy last week when Ben Wallace was quoted as saying that Britain was not Amazon, perhaps in reaction to President Zelensky, quite understandably, in my view, pushing very hard for Ukrainian NATO membership. But given what you're saying about Ben Wallace, I assume that his Ukrainian friends sort of took his slightly blunt remarks in their stride, knowing him in a more rounded way.
I was again in Vilnius. I was witness to many of things which were happening there. I can tell you that there are a lot of emotions from Ukrainian side. And that's why I think that the way our president reacted on the words of Ben Wallace was not the right way to do. With all respect to President Zelensky, I think it's about exhaustion and emotions. But again, we all in Ukraine know how much Ben Wallace did, and in general, the United Kingdom. And if Ukraine did not receive during the Vilnius summit what we deserve to receive, really, the official invitation to become a member of NATO, definitely we are disappointed that this summit did not become a historical one. But it's definitely not fault of the UK and Ben Wallace or Rishi Sunak or in general of the UK. Because the United Kingdom, together with a number of other allies, were absolutely straightforward in support of Ukraine. And that was decision of Germany and the United States to be much more hesitant, I can say. That's a pity because Putin understands only one language of force. And the language of a final communique of NATO summit is the language of hesitation. But again, it's not the language of the UK. It's the language of other countries.